Her income is not higher than yours. Her apartment is smaller. The neighborhood is not the fashionable one. She does not own a car. Her phone is not the most recent model. The bag on the chair beside the door is the bag she has carried for 7 years. And it looks like the bag she has carried for 7 years, well used, well maintained, not replaced because it no longer needed to be. And at the end of every month, she has money left. Not a little money left. A meaningful amount. An amount that has been accumulating, quietly, without drama, for long enough that what she has now is not savings in the sense of putting something away for later. It is freedom. The particular quality of life that arrives when the financial decisions you make each month are not reactions to what the month cost, but choices about what the month was worth. You have been sitting across from her for 40 minutes, trying to understand the arithmetic. It does not add up. The income and the life do not correspond in the way that the West has convinced you they should. She is not wealthy by any measure the financial industry would recognize. She is not minimalist in the ascetic sense of someone who has renounced comfort. She has a small plant on the windowsill, a cup of tea she made with care, a print on the wall that she bought at a market 11 years ago and still considers among the best money she ever spent. Her apartment is warm and complete, and entirely itself. The life visible inside it is the life of someone who has been making deliberate, unhurried decisions about what belongs in it for long enough that nothing in it is accidental. She is not rich. She has something more durable than rich. She has the specific quality that the Japanese call seikatsu, the art of daily life. Not a standard of living in the quantitative sense, but a standard of living in the experiential sense. The question of what a good day feels like, answered and re-answered and refined over years of paying attention to the answer. You have been trying to understand the arithmetic. The arithmetic is not the thing. The thing is something the West forgot to teach you, and Japan has been practicing for generations. By the end of this, you will have a word for it. And 7 ways to begin. You know what the purchase was supposed to do. Not the practical thing, you understood that. The other thing. The thing that was supposed to arrive with the purchase and stay longer than it did. The small but distinct pleasure of the new thing. The feeling of having treated yourself. The momentary sense that the life improved in proportion to the thing added to it. And you know how long that feeling lasted. Because you have made enough purchases now to have observed the pattern. The feeling was real. It was not a lie, it was not a trick, and it faded. Within days for some things, within weeks for most, within a month for almost everything, and when it faded, the baseline returned to where it was before the purchase, and the next purchase required to produce the same effect was waiting. Psychologists have a name for this: hedonic adaptation, the documented, replicated, entirely predictable phenomenon by which human beings return to their emotional baseline after any change in their circumstances, positive or negative, within a period of weeks to months. The raise that felt like it would change everything changes nothing in the way you expected by the 3rd month. The car that was going to make the commute beautiful makes the commute and is then simply the car. Dr. Tim Kasser at Knox College has spent decades studying the relationship between material values and well-being. His finding, consistent across cultures, ages, and income levels, is that people who place high importance on financial success, material possessions, and status consumption report lower levels of subjective well-being, higher levels of anxiety, and lower life satisfaction than people who place importance on experiences, relationships, and personal growth. Not lower well-being because they are poor, lower well-being because the framework itself, the idea that the next purchase will produce the lasting feeling that the last one didn't, keeps the feeling perpetually just ahead of where you are. The goal cannot be reached by the means being used. And the cortisol of the gap between where you are and where the next purchase promises to take you runs continuously in the background of every financial decision. Japan did not solve this with a savings plan, with a budget, with a financial system, with a philosophy. And the philosophy does not begin with money. It begins with the question that Japan kept asking while the rest of the world forgot to ask it. What does a good day feel like? Financial stress is the most prevalent form of chronic stress in the contemporary Western world. Not financial poverty, that is a different and more acute category. Financial stress, the ambient pressure of spending that slightly exceeds what is comfortable, of the credit card that is almost paid and then needs something else, of the month-end calculation that produces anxiety rather than surplus. The financial stress of a life that requires more than it currently has, not because the needs are unmet, but because the wants have been positioned as needs by an industry that depends on that positioning. Dr. Darby Saxby's research has documented the cortisol profile of financial stress in domestic environments. Her finding, households that describe themselves as financially strained show elevated cortisol not primarily in the moments of financial decision-making, but throughout the day, as a background state. The stress is not the bill, it is the awareness of the bill. The same ambient cognitive load that the probability refrigerator produces, at a higher frequency and a greater persistence. But here is the finding that the financial industry has the least interest in communicating. Research from the American Psychological Association on the relationship between income and happiness has found that beyond a certain threshold, one that covers genuine needs and modest comfort, additional income produces no additional well-being. The millionth dollar does not produce more happiness than the 100,000th. The fifth luxury purchase does not produce more satisfaction than the first modest sufficiency. What produces well-being, consistently and durably, across the entire literature? Clear sufficiency. Knowing what enough looks like. Having a defined sense of what a good life contains, not an infinite aspiration, but a specific, achievable, present-tense image of the day that is enough, and living within it rather than running perpetually toward the version that is slightly beyond it. She lives at her sufficiency threshold, not because she cannot imagine wanting more, because she decided, at some point, what enough looks like for her, and the decision, made once and held, produces the month-end surplus and the 7-year bag and the print on the wall that is still considered one of the best purchases of her life. 7 things produce that life. Here is what they look like from the inside. Before she decides what to buy, she asks a different question. Not, what do I want? Not, what would improve my life? Not, what is everyone else getting? The question is, what does a good day feel like? And the answer is specific. Not the good day of the weekend trip, or the good day of the celebration, or the good day of the significant purchase. The ordinary Tuesday good day. The one that happens not because anything exceptional occurred, but because the conditions were right. Seikatsu, the quality of daily life. Not as a measurement of what you own, but as a description of how each day feels from the inside. She can describe a good day precisely. It involves a cup of tea made properly, and the morning that opens without urgency, and the meal that is seasonal and fresh and prepared with attention, and the evening that is quiet enough to hear the quality of its own quietness. It involves movement, the walk, the errands done on foot. That is not exercise, but simply the body occupying the city it lives in. It involves something made or tended or completed with the hands. It does not involve, she noticed years ago, very much that costs money. This is the foundational discovery that the rest of the 7 habits emerge from. The good day does not require purchase. The good day requires conditions: time, attention, a clean counter, a functional kitchen, a relationship with the season, a body that is fed and moved, most of which are free, or very nearly free, and all of which are undermined rather than enhanced by the financial anxiety that is the cost of spending beyond seikatsu in pursuit of the life that is supposed to arrive with the next purchase. She spends money on the conditions for the good day. She does not spend money trying to replace the conditions with products that promise to replicate what the conditions produce. That is the first and most important distinction. She does not buy 3 things when one good thing would do. This is not a principle she articulates. It is the natural consequence of a relationship with objects that begins with their purpose and ends when their purpose is complete. The bag she carries is not the cheapest bag she could have found. It was not impulsive. It was chosen over the course of several weeks, held and considered and evaluated against the specific requirements of the life it would serve, purchased at a price that acknowledged it would serve that life for as long as it could. 7 years later, it is serving that life. The Japanese concept of monozukuri, the art and craft of making things, the philosophy of quality production, informs the purchasing side of the equation with equal precision. The thing made well enough to last is the thing worth buying. The thing bought cheaply enough to replace is the thing never quite bought at all. It is rented, temporarily, at a cost that compounds over the replacements into something significantly greater than the single good purchase would have been. Research from the University of Arizona on the economics of quality purchasing found that consumers who bought higher quality items that lasted significantly longer ultimately spent less per year of use than consumers who bought lower quality items and replaced them more frequently. The cheap option is rarely cheap when the cost is amortized across the full period of use. But the deeper point is not economic. It is attentional. Every object she owns was chosen. Every object was considered. Every object has a relationship with the life it serves that is not the relationship of the impulsive purchase or the convenience buy or the thing that filled a gap without quite fitting it. Her apartment contains fewer things than yours. Each of them is more completely itself. One thing well. Not three things cheaply. Not because the economics always favor it, though they usually do. Because the life that contains fewer, better chosen things is a lighter life. And a lighter life is, consistently and measurably, a happier one. She does not pay for experiences she can have for free. Not as a deprivation, not as a discipline, because the experience available for free has a quality that the purchased experience has consistently failed to replicate in her observation of both. Ichigo Ichie. One time, one meeting. The understanding, encountered elsewhere in this series, that this moment, this specific convergence of weather and light, and the particular feeling of this day, will not occur again, and that the correct response to that understanding is presence, rather than documentation, attention rather than consumption. The Saturday morning walk through the neighborhood she has lived in for 11 years, in which the light is always doing something slightly different, and the corner market has something new in the window, and the cafe produces a smell that is different today from yesterday, in a way she cannot quite account for but notices. Free, more pleasurable, in the specific quality of its pleasure, than the restaurant she could have booked for the same Saturday, and spent 40 times as much in exchange for a controlled experience rather than the uncontrolled one that the city produces for nothing. Thomas Gilovich at Cornell has studied the happiness differential between experiential and material purchases for decades. His consistent finding, experiences produce more durable happiness than material goods, not more intense happiness at the moment of acquisition. The new object frequently wins there. More durable happiness over the long arc, because the experience becomes part of identity, something that happened, that was felt, that contributed to the person rather than to the inventory, while the object depreciates and is superseded. And free experiences produce, in his research, happiness equivalent to purchased experiences of comparable intensity. The walk is the dinner, the conversation is the concert, the afternoon in the garden is the weekend away. Not always, but more often than the spending culture acknowledges. She has spent this Saturday morning in the neighborhood. She has spent nothing. The morning was excellent. The print on the wall above the low table was bought from a market 11 years ago. She does not remember exactly what it cost. Something modest, the kind of price that felt like a risk at the time and has produced, in the 11 years since, approximately the same pleasure every morning as it produced on the first morning it was on the wall. Not diminished, not superseded. Still the first thing her eyes find. Mono no aware. The gentle sadness of transience. The appreciation of what is impermanent precisely because it is impermanent, which produces a quality of attention to what exists that does not arise when the assumption is that something better is always available or on the way. Japan's cultural relationship with impermanence is not resignation. It is the specific form of attention that comes from understanding that this thing, this view, this season, this print that is beginning to show its age at the corners, is not going to be this way forever, and that the correct response to that is not replacement but appreciation. The West's consumption culture runs on the opposite premise, that nothing owned is quite good enough, that the next version is always better, that the thing currently in use is primarily a placeholder for the improved thing that will eventually replace it. This premise, repeated often enough across enough categories of consumption, produces a life in which nothing is quite fully inhabited, always a step away from its replacement, never quite arrived. She is not waiting for a better print. She is not in the market for a more interesting one. She is looking at the one on the wall above the low table, which she has looked at every morning for 11 years, and finding in it something that has not yet been exhausted. That relationship with what is already owned is not scarcity. It is depth. She knows what enough looks like. Not as a number, she does not have a target savings figure or an income goal or a net worth she is moving toward. As an image, a specific, present tense, already achievable image of the life that is enough. The apartment she is sitting in, the bag she has carried for 7 years, the morning walk and the seasonal meal and the evening quiet enough to hear its own quietness. This is the most important distinction between her financial life and most of the financial lives in the world she lives in: the sufficiency threshold. The clear, held, revisable answer to the question that the spending culture is specifically and systematically designed to prevent you from answering, "What is enough?" Research from the field of goal psychology, including seminal work by Peter Gollwitzer on implementation intentions and sufficiency, has found that goals with clear end states produce significantly lower anxiety and significantly higher achievement than goals that are open-ended. The person who knows what they are running toward arrives. The person running toward an ever-receding horizon does not. Financial goals without sufficiency thresholds are open-ended by definition. More is always better. No amount is quite enough. The cortisol of the gap between where you are and where you are supposed to be runs permanently at low tide, rising and falling with the month's spending and the year's comparison, but never fully quiet. She set her threshold. She revisited it when things changed, when the city became more expensive, when her circumstances shifted, when the image of the sufficient life required adjustment. But she holds a threshold. The image of enough is specific, and the life inside the image is the life she is already living. The surplus at the end of each month is not the result of discipline. It is the result of knowing where the inside of the threshold is, and choosing to remain there rather than perpetually approaching its outside. She does not know what you spent last month. She does not know what her neighbor spent. She does not have a feed that displays, in curated and flattering detail, how the lives of people she barely knows have been provisioned and photographed and presented as evidence of the kind of life that spending can produce. The removal of comparison is not a privacy practice. It is a financial habit. Research on social comparison and spending from the Journal of Consumer Psychology has found that exposure to the consumption displays of peers, even displays that are not intended as competitive, produces measurable increases in discretionary spending within 2 to 4 weeks of sustained exposure. The mechanism is well documented. The brain registers the gap between what it sees others having and what it currently has, and the discomfort of that gap activates the spending impulse as a gap-closing mechanism. Social media has industrialized this mechanism at a scale that no previous generation of consumers had to navigate. The feed is a continuous display of other people's consumption, their holidays, their kitchens, their purchases, each one a data point for the brain's perpetual comparison of where it is against where others appear to be. Japan's historically lower social media engagement, its cultural emphasis on private rather than public consumption, its deep social norm against conspicuous display, these are not coincidental properties of a culture that also happens to save more and stress about money less. They are the mechanism. The removal of the comparison removes the primary driver of aspirational spending that produces the financial anxiety, that produces the cortisol, that produces the spending, that produces the financial anxiety. She does not know what you spent. She has no need to know. Her sufficiency threshold was not set by reference to anyone else's, and the life inside that threshold is sufficient because it was designed for her life, not for the life she might have if she spent like the average of what the feed displays. She will not replace the bag until the bag can no longer do what the bag is supposed to do. Not when a better version appears, not when the season changes and another style seems more appropriate, not when the bag has done 7 years and the implicit social expectation of a replacement is beginning to form. The bag will be replaced when the bag is finished, not before. The long-held thing is not a financial strategy in the sense of a deliberate money-saving plan. It is the expression of a relationship with objects that the previous habits have produced. When the thing was chosen well, when the thing serves seikatsu, when the thing was bought with full attention to its purpose and quality, the replacement of it before it is finished is not an upgrade. It is a waste, mottainai. And the thing that is not replaced before its time is the thing that develops the specific quality of the long held. The particular softness of the leather at the handle where the hand has carried it, the specific way it opens that has been learned over years of opening, the familiarity that makes it not just a bag but part of the daily texture of the life it has served. Research from the field of material culture and well-being has found that people who report high attachment to long-held objects, who have things in their lives they have owned for years and maintain a relationship with, report higher life satisfaction and lower materialism than those who cycle through objects frequently. Not because the object itself produces the satisfaction, because the capacity to form that relationship, to inhabit a thing fully rather than looking past it to the next one, is the same capacity that inhabits the life rather than looking past it. She will not replace the bag until the bag is finished. When it is finished, she will choose the next one with the same attention she gave the first. The money she did not spend replacing it at 4 years, or 5, or 6, is the money that is sitting at the end of this month in the surplus that is the visible expression of everything the 7 habits produce. You are still sitting across from her. The tea is cold. The afternoon has moved on outside the window of the apartment that is smaller than yours, in the neighborhood that is not the fashionable one, containing the life that is richer than the one you were expecting to find here. The arithmetic has resolved. She earns approximately what you earn. She spends approximately half, not through sacrifice, not through privation, not through the specific exhausting discipline of a person who has decided to go without. Through the specific and durable understanding that the good day, the ordinary Tuesday that is good without being exceptional, does not require purchase. 7 habits produce this understanding. Seikatsu, the question of what a good day feels like, answered specifically and held, so the spending that follows is the spending that serves the answer rather than the spending that searches for it. Quality over quantity, the one thing chosen well, used until it is finished, replaced when it is done rather than when something newer appears. Ichigo Ichie in the everyday, the free, unrepeatable experience of the walk, the conversation, the morning that this particular light will not produce again, valued not because it costs nothing, but because it offers what the purchased experience consistently fails to. Mono no aware, the appreciation of what exists, the print on the wall that is still excellent 11 years later, the deep inhabitation of the already owned, the sufficiency threshold, the specific, present tense, already achievable image of the life that is enough, set by reference to the actual conditions of the actual life rather than the aspirational display of the social feed. The removal of comparison, the absence of the primary driver of aspirational spending, not through discipline, but through the structural decision not to participate in the comparison mechanism that generates the spending impulse. And the long-held thing, the bag that has 7 years and will have more, the relationship with the object that the long-held develops, the money that accumulates in the not replacing before it is finished. Tonight, one question, not a budget, not a savings target, not a subscription canceled or a purchase deferred. What does a good day feel like for you, specifically? Not the good day of the exceptional occasion, the ordinary Wednesday good day, the one that is good without requiring anything special to make it so. Write it down if you need to, hold it if you don't, but answer it specifically enough that you could identify, the next time you are about to spend money on something, whether this purchase is serving the answer or searching for it. That question is where the arithmetic changes. She answered it years ago. The surplus at the end of the month, the 7-year bag, the print on the wall that costs something modest, and has been excellent every morning since. All of it is the answer to that question, made visible over time. What does a good day feel like for you? Answer that first. Everything else follows. Share this with someone who earns enough, but ends every month wondering where it went. They may not have a spending problem. They may have an unanswered question.